You're listening to the Southampton Delivery Podcast, a podcast dedicated to the Southampton Football Club and all of the SFC fans.
I'm really happy to be here. It's a pleasure for me.
Fonte with a scooping header.
I would like to make the most of with this opportunity.
It's infield to Mane, 25 yards out. Lovely ball for Bella. Onside, 1-0. Buffon shot. Oh my word.
He ran around a bit like Bambi on ice. Really very, very embarrassing to watch.
And now, your host, Matt Markstone.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Southampton Delivery Podcast, a podcast dedicated to the Southampton Football Club and all of the SFC fans. My name is Matt Markstone. I'm the host of the show, and no matter where you are, no matter how you may be listening, whether this is your first time or you've been here before, thank you for making the show part of your day. I hope that you enjoy it. This week on the show, I had the opportunity to speak again with Ben Hernandez-Stroud, who runs and writes the Archers Road End blog. And this is the first time in a long time that I've had a chance to talk with him. I talked with him way back on episode 30 about writing the blog, about social media, which is his work, and about the team, of course, because that's kind of what we were talking about. But that was midsummer. It was right around the time that somebody on Saints Web put out that VVD was being sold for sure right then. And basically all of Saints Twitter melted down. And we talked about that. And this week, we talk a little bit more about social media, and it's not so much about player speculation or transfer rumors and things like that, but it's kind of about some of the things that are being said to one another. And we talk a little bit about that, but mostly we talk about the team, of course, because that is what this show is all about. And we talk about the win over Watford in the FA Cup and what it means for the team going forward. We still manage to find ways to question the manager because he makes decisions that we just don't quite agree with, but we try to talk that out, work that out, and we take some listener questions as well. So if you haven't followed Ben's blog, you should do that. It's archersroad.wordpress.com. The links, of course, are in the show notes. You can follow him on all the normal social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all that stuff. And I would encourage you to do so. It's not one of these daily blogs or kind of hourly things. This is, once a quarter or so. And what's there is thoughtful and heartfelt and usually fairly objective. And I really enjoy it. And I think you will too. So give it a chance. Once again, it's at archersroad.wordpress.com. And now let's go ahead and get to my conversation with Ben. But before we do that, I'd just like to remind you that this podcast is partnered with the Saints Report. For all your Saints FC news and needs, be sure to follow the Saints Report on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. The links are in the show notes. You won't be disappointed. And now here's my conversation with Ben Hernandez-Stroud, author of the Archers Road End blog. We'd like to welcome back to the Southampton Delivery Podcast, Ben Hernandez-Stroud from the Archers Road End. If you haven't visited his blog, you can do so. The links are in the show notes, and you can find him on Twitter at Archers Road End. Ben, welcome back to the show. We're here to talk about Watford, the FA Cup, a number of other things going on at the club, and just welcome back, and thanks for doing this.
No, it's great. Thanks for having me back on here, Matt. Really appreciate it.
Oh, no, my pleasure. My pleasure. Before we get into that, can you just kind of remind everybody kind of what the Archers Road End blog is and what people can expect if they were to visit it?
The Archers Road End is a long form blog. I tend to publish quarterly, usually, whenever the mood takes me. I'm not, my spot isn't news and constant updates. It's more talking broadly about the state of the club and the fans, and also trying to keep a connection with the past, because the Archers Road End was a stand at the Dell and the little chocolate box, as they used to call it. So it's nice to call back to the past and maybe remember some, we've had some fantastic players, not just in the past 10 years, but in the past, over, 100 years. So it's good to recognise that. So that's kind of part of what I do as well.
All right. You mentioned that, well, leading up to us actually hitting record, you had just written a novel. Can you give us any insight as to what it's about or anything like that, or can you not talk about that?
Well, yeah, I can talk about it. It's not football related. It's coming out in the summer. It's going to be a novel about a boy who hears messages from beyond through his little Fisher-Price cassette player. I've written the first draft of it. I've got another short story coming out. But yeah, I'll have more information in the coming months. But yeah, it's nice. It's a good outlet for me, and I love writing. So this is what I want to do.
All right. And you work in social media, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, I do. So I've worked with everyone from Ministry of Sound to NASA and the British Space Agency. So I've done a fair few little bits and bobs with social. That's my daily little hustle.
And I've noticed since the last time we talked, you have branched out from Twitter with Archers Road In to Instagram and also to Facebook, so people can follow you there as well.
Yeah, I have. I just felt like it expanding it. Social's what I do, and one thing I like about Instagram is it's just being able to share nice pictures of the old programs. There's nothing nicer than searching through old football programs and kind of going, that's a nice picture. I just like little touch points on the past, and I realised I've got a lot of pictures and I've got a lot of memories and stuff from the game and from being a Southampton fan. And I think it's nice to be able to share that, and not necessarily make it all about the here and now, because we've been here a long time as a club and we will be here for a long time as a club. So, I think it's important to know our place in history.
Yeah. I had some programs sent to me by a couple of people. Scott Shenton, who's a listener in Australia, sent me a full box of stuff that I've enjoyed, and both the food and the everything, but the Vegemite was delicious. Vegemite.
Yeah, the Vegemite. Yeah. That's an acquired taste.
Yeah. And you guys have something in the UK that's similar. Is that correct?
Yeah, Marmite.
Okay. Yeah. No thanks. But and then another guy from the East Coast, Stephen Brandt, sent me another couple programs and things like that. So I have them, and it's like my wife's like, "What are you going to do with those?" And I was like, "I don't know. Like I don't know where to put them or hang them." So I have them sitting here, and it's like, well, I will figure out where they go at some point. But right now, they're just going to I'm going to look at them every once in a while. But hopefully,
no one ever knows what to do with programs. People buy them. No one ever knows what to do with them. They normally end up in a cardboard box, and then just people take them out when they're feeling wistful on a Sunday afternoon and just look at them.
All right.
So yeah.
Well, then I'm doing it right.
You are. You're doing it right. So you can look at it and you go, oh, I remember. I remember when Marek Saganowski played for us. Oh, heady days. Oh, Peter Madsen. Oh, marvellous. Oh, Jermaine Wright. Yeah. So you just kind of go on and stuff like that, and it's just a little trip down memory lane.
All right. Well, I will be sure to get one when I am away and over there at a match. I will make sure I pick up a program just to put in the box with the rest of them, and we can always remember the first time.
Yeah, put in the box along with all of the rest of the manager's notes that we have from.
Yeah, they have to write something in every program, right? Like every week.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they write it. I think that's in loose. I think that those are in loose quotations. Yeah. Thank you very much. We welcome so-and-so team here. It's really important that we win this game. Thanks a lot for coming on.
I mean, it's nice to do that, but I don't think anybody's really getting the program for the manager's notes so they can, see, get some tactical insight, because that's not what's happening. And I don't want to be too, rude about it, but I'm not sure our manager could offer much tactical insight in a program note right now based on some of the decisions he made yesterday. And that's probably the most critical I've been of him all season, but it's, man. So let's look at the match. And I guess if we should say, starting off, it's a win, right? It's building on some confidence, I guess, for the guys. we're through to the next round of the FA Cup. I was 100% wrong on my team selection in terms of what I thought we were going to put out there. It's almost an embarrassment to put what I put up on Instagram because I think I got one player correct. But what were your thoughts when you saw the team sheet yesterday coming out, and was that what you expected for an FA Cup match when we have such a kind of a big week in the league coming up soon?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of expected James Ward-Prowse to be rested. I think that he's going to be really important for us in the coming games. I think he's proved himself. He's coming in leaps and bounds. He's one of the players who's improved under Pellegrino. I think that he's benefiting from having a set position. He hasn't always had that with previous managers. I remember Koeman used to deploy him pretty much across the midfield, everywhere from dead centre midfield to maybe kind of out on the right. So having Prowse get a game in a position, get games in positions which he's comfortable in is good. Wasn't surprised that Shane Long was starting. I think that he's Pellegrino's preferred striker. I mean, striker's something that a term that I use very loosely with Shane. He works very hard. But, that's about as far as I can go with it. I was surprised. I was pleased to see Boufal in the starting lineup, and it was nice to see that Bertrand, for at least the start, was fit and available. But then obviously that changed. And it was nice to get an early goal, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And you were sat on the ground. I was listening on the radio, and my only or on the website actually, and my only kind of gripe with it was that it was 10 minutes behind.
Really?
Yeah. So I kept refreshing, kind of thinking it's just gotta do it. And then I was watching on Twitter, people are going, oh, this and that. And then the game started and I'm like, I'm still getting advertisements. And then I was worried. I thought it wasn't going to work. And then finally it said, and it came on and said, oh, we're 7 minutes from kickoff. And I was like, oh, well, just shut Twitter off and just focus on the radio. But, I think, I don't know, the lineup was a little bit, like I said, a little bit strange, but I wasn't that unhappy with what was out there. I thought that was a statement of kind of intent from the manager of this is important. And he's obviously got the confidence that Stevens and Hood can continue to play. And Remey is obviously probably going to play, I think, both games this week, and he's going to probably sit in that holding role. I thought Højbjerg and Davis would have switched positions, maybe that Davis would have been playing kind of in front, but according to the lineup that they put out, at least Højbjerg was sitting in front of Davis and Remey, but I'm not sure exactly how they lined up once they were actually on the pitch.
Yeah, Davo tended to push forward a little bit. I think they kind of I think they traded quite well. I think they've got kind of quite a good understanding on that side of things. So, it's nice to see Højbjerg play. I really enjoy watching him. He doesn't give the ball away, and he's a good player. And same with Davo. Two good players. It's funny. You look at that team and you think, why are they struggling in the league?
Right.
But then you go back to what you said about how you posted a lineup and you had about one player correct in it. You're probably not the only one, because Pellegrino likes to spin his wheel of fortune before the game and decide who's playing. So, it's quite a confusing. What I wouldn't give sometimes for a settled lineup. I know rotation has to happen, but sometimes I think it's so important. Players play alongside each other week in, week out. Relationships are built and understandings built. So regardless of what people think about, new players, etc., I think I think it's important that back line that we have, Remey sitting in front of Hoyt and Stevens, really important. We keep that triangle.
Yeah, and I mean, yesterday it worked. And I guess the only kind of gripe you can have with the two center backs is neither of them are particularly good in the air. They're both comfortable on the ball; they can both pass. But you worry about them in the air. And I kind of thought Bertrand was sick. I thought I had read somewhere or heard somewhere that he was out ill, so it was going to be somebody else. But then I don't think McQueen's fully fit either. And so I was unaware of what was going to happen. And then of course Bertrand went off injured. But let's start with the good stuff, which is before he went off injured, he managed to put a really nice ball into the box. And I'm not sure who got the initial touch, but I know that Stevens put away the rebound.
Yep.
I mean, it's only 4 minutes in, but I think we were on the front foot right from the get go. Is that kind of how it happened when you're sitting in the stadium?
Yeah, I was pleased with how we started the game. We pressed quite high, actually. It was, there seemed to be a bit of intent and a bit of endeavour. So to get the early goal is good. The nice thing is you could literally see the confidence kind of come back into the players after that. The stadium was immediately a lot more, the stadium at the moment's like a corked bottle of, something bubbly. There's so much pressure in that stadium, and just the goal just let it out.
Yeah.
So it kind of, it helped kind of calm everyone and get everybody, kind of feeling comfortable again.
Mm-hmm.
But then after that initial 5 minutes, everyone's back to kind of feeling incredibly tense again.
Well, I mean, we've seen early on in the season, and I can't really say early on, I guess, we've seen this season that, there have been plenty of instances where we've scored early on, and then it's, everybody just is immediately saying, don't sit back. And inevitably we do. And I think it's normal to, especially when you're lacking confidence, to kind of just go, okay, we have a lead. Now we have to defend it. And you just keep dropping deeper and deeper and deeper.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't do that the entire match though. I think we kind of went back and forth between doing that and then kind of realizing, oh, we need to press forward. And is that was how it was described on the radio? Is that what you saw when you were sitting in the stadium?
Yeah, it was. That's pretty much spot on. And one thing I'd like to say is that I know a lot of people say that we tend to drop deep, and we do. We definitely do. But I think that there are two teams in the game. So Watford were, I'm not going to mince my words here. Once again, they were atrocious when we played them at home. They should never have been in the game, let alone, a draw, when we played them at Vicarage Road. And today and yesterday again, they were awful, absolutely awful. And but they're a Premier League side, and Premier League sides push other Premier League sides back. I think sometimes when we talk about it, and we can be, there's a tendency to be a bit one-eyed with it, and go that the other team is completely, the game is 100% in our control, and we're totally capable of defining the exact way of playing. You can play that way, but teams will always have chances, and teams will always force you back. That's the nature of football. So, Watford did have decent spells of pressure yesterday, and yes, we did drop back. But the good thing about it was that, there were a few opportunities where we broke very quickly on the break. And whenever Boufal gets the ball, I mean, he terrified that Watford defence. He had their number. I mean, he did the Boufal thing of, it was an absolutely spectacular ball, I think, some way through the first half, that just looped across to him on his side of the pitch. And I was like, oh, is he going to take that? Is he going to take that? And he just dead-balled it, like pretty much just killed it. And it was like that amazing little bit of control that you can see that he's capable of. And then he tried to do a turn and put it out of play. So that's the infuriating element of Boufal all rolled into one. But he terrifies players. Every time I've seen him play against nearly every defence that I've seen him play against, whether it's Chelsea, whether it's Arsenal, whether it's whoever he plays against, defenders are scared of him, because he's so tricky. And I think that he's getting better and better. That kind of leads on to the knowledge that the kind of why people were annoyed, I guess, when he got brought off.
Yeah. And you're right. Boufal does scare people because he has kind of these elements of he's fast enough. He can run by you. And he can kind of, I don't know. He's one of those guys where if you're trying to play with him in the park, you never get the ball from him, and eventually in Sunday League, somebody would just hack him because you're tired of watching him do tricks.
He tracks back as well. That's the thing. That's the thing about it. A lot of, very underrated element of his game. People seem to kind of have this preconception of skillful players that they're kind of luxury passengers and stuff like that.
Right.
If he loses the ball, he tracks back. I've seen him bust a gut a fair few times. So, I think he's a team player as well.
And I'm not sure he did that last year. I think at least we didn't give him credit for it last year, but I've kind of tried to point out that that's one of the things that I've noticed this year is that he is making the effort to track back and be a part of the team. And he's not, in that way, he's different than maybe a Mahrez or an Ozil, where he's doing that more often than not. It's it is the rule instead of the exception to it in terms of how he plays now. And I thought that I think that helps because I don't think we have the luxury of having kind of that kind of just the passenger player, the guy that gets to create and not have to do anything else, that gets a free roll. We don't have that in our system. And so to have him and Tadic, to be fair, they both do it. And I think they're good for it. And I think Tadic has been better recently, in terms of some of the, go ahead.
I think that Tadic gets an incredibly hard time, from fans. I really do. I think that he's committed to the club. He clearly cares a lot. Whenever anyone's chanting his name, his hands up straight away. He loves it.
Yeah.
He acknowledges the fans. You see the passion when he scores. He goes crazy. And yeah, he's a trier. He's a skillful player and he tries things. And this is the thing: we're not very patient with creative players sometimes. With creative players, sometimes 90% of what they do doesn't come off, but that 10% of the stuff that they do that does come off changes games. Yeah, he could overhit. He could overhit a pass. Yeah, but at the same time, he could thread a perfect through ball or score a fantastic goal, or bring someone into the game who then sets up a fantastic goal. So, I think that because we look at players, because we're fed so much globally of all of these fantastic players, and I always say this about Messi. You go onto YouTube and you search, Messi highlights, and you'll get videos, 20-minute videos of outrageous skill from Lionel Messi. But if there's a 20-minute video of Messi's outrageous skills, I could bet you there's a 2-hour video of elements where it hasn't come off at all.
Right.
That's the nature of being a creative player. So, and the same with Letizia, same with Shannon, same with all of our all of the other wonderful creative players that we've had. It comes off a lot less than it works. So I think patience with those sort of players is essential. If you have if we had a consistent Sofiane Boufal who played that way all of the time, and we had a consistent Dusan Tadic who played that way consistently all the time, they'd be worth 80 to 100 million.
Yeah. And really those players just kind of don't exist. I mean, even no matter what your line of work is, I mean, their line of work is doing this creative stuff and creating chances and I mean, how many times do you hit backspace when you're typing an email? That's essentially what it means if they lose possession at one point. It's like, oh, back up and let's try it again. And that's what we want. So it's just kind of,
they don't, you're right. They don't get autocorrect.
Right.
They don't get a chance to autocorrect something once they've done it. Whereas we do.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, so like you said, there are two teams in the game, and in every game, most games, we should say, because sometimes Man City seem to just have possession the entire time. But for the most part, the teams are going to push each other back and forth. And so it's not always just us sitting back. And I think sometimes we do invite it. But like you said, Watford had their moments yesterday. But there were a couple of instances yesterday where we put crosses into Long, I think hard on the ground, and I think he was unable to control them. I think he put them both out of bounds. And then I think the downside to the first half is that Bertrand had to go off injured. And I was listening to it on the radio, but did you see anything? It happened? I think it happened kind of off the ball. I don't even think I don't think he was tackled. I think it was more of a hamstring maybe.
Yeah, it was his it was his hamstring. He just went down and he just sat down off the ball, and once kind of he sits down like that, you're just like, no, he's not. That's it. He needs to come off. So you can just see it. You can just tell straight away when you see a player and they're not going to complete the game, because he just sat down. His whole body language was like, yeah, I can't play anymore.
Right.
So we took him off. We brought on PA, and there's not much I can say about him really.
Yeah, I mean the worrying thing there is that's the wrong side for PA. He is, you could tell. Yeah, and he's average. I think he can fill in a couple games at right back if necessary, but he's definitely not a guy you want starting long term. And then putting him on the wrong side, I was a little bit worried that we were gonna get beat there. But and it was tough to tell. His name didn't get mentioned a whole lot, so I guess that's good as he's basically coming on to play defense. And he did there was a nice moment at the end of the match where he went over and gave a fan his shirt, which I think has been going around on Twitter, which is good to see. And that's, that's part of it.
Yeah, definitely.
But then, we had on the other side, we had Cedric several times. He was having a fantastic game, fantastic match, get kind of clattered a bunch of times and nothing really came of it. And he was down kind of injured for a while. And there was then I'm worried, is Yoshida going to come in and who's going to go to right back? And that to think that the back line could be Stevens, Yoshida, Hoot, but kind of out of position, except for Hoot, all of them. And then PA, like this could be a disaster. This has the makings of being an absolute disaster at the back. But luckily that kind of didn't happen. But going into halftime, we're up 1-0. What was the kind of the mood around the ground at that point?
I think that everybody's just, the atmosphere is quite flat at the moment. I think that's a combination of factors. I personally don't think we had a bad half. We were quite unlucky with injuries. But we got a goal and we were 1-0 up, and Watford didn't really look like they were at the races. It's curiously flat, and I kind of I wonder. I think part of that may have been down to the fact that the northern stand had been kind of split up a little bit because we'd given extra allocation to Watford fans. So they were creating a lot of noise, and maybe we were a little bit less vocal. But yeah, it just seems kind of curiously flat at the moment, which is a real shame. I think sometimes the players deserve a bit better than that. I genuinely do. There are a few times that I was pretty, I was fairly infuriated by some of the hard time that some of our midfielders get in particular. I think some of it's a bit unnecessary.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm not sure how much the negativity really helps in the moment. Jeering a player or something like that, or ironically clapping. I don't think that does anything for confidence. And every player responds differently. Some people are just going to do that and say, "Oh, I'll prove you wrong." But a lot of times, that they are professional athletes, but they're not robots.
I challenge anybody to do their job effectively when you've got someone screaming that you were useless at you.
Yeah.
Really. That's I don't know anybody who did that and who would do that. And sometimes I think that there's a lack of common sense as well. There was a point in the second half when, Højbjerg was passed the ball back, and there was a huge kind of, uproar around the stadium. Why is he passing the ball back? But if people were looking at the whole game, there was nobody for him to pass to. If he would have passed it forward, the ball, or sideways, we would have conceded possession. So sometimes it's easier to do that. Sometimes you have to go backwards to go forwards. And, I think that it's sometimes you have to be patient as well. Because, we're not playing against, 11 bollards. We're playing against 11 athletes who are also trying to win the game. Right. Because they're a high standard, they can change games on this, they can change games like that. It takes seconds to score a goal. So, I think sometimes maybe, trust the players that we have and just back them while they're out there. Yeah. They need that more than ever.
Yeah. I mean, it's a full, it goes all the way around. The players need the fans need the players. It's what part of being a fan is about is kind of, you have to realize when they need you to pick them up, and the hope is that the team will do that for you as well, that they will realize that, they need to perform for the fans at that point, and they will do that, I think, for the most part, or they will give it their best effort, and I think that's all we can really ask.
Yeah, totally. It's a symbiotic relationship, and we both, the fans feed off the players, and vice versa. So if you don't get one element, the other element breaks down. But it's important for us to look at what we can do as supporters when we're in the stadium. What can we do? What does it do to what benefit does it do to boo the players off at half time? What does that do? Yes, I mean, it's expressing displeasure, but I think if a team goes off knowing, these are highly paid professionals who are who are much better at football than you or I. So I'm sure they know when they've had a bad half of football.
Yeah, absolutely. And if they don't, man, we're all in trouble because.
Yeah, exactly. We've had players before who probably don't know. We've had players who are probably aren't sure that they are only semi-aware they're on a football pitch. But I think the guys that we have now are a few cuts above that. Anyone who's ever seen Jermaine Wright play in a Southampton shirt is probably very grateful that we have the midfield that we have at the moment.
Okay.
So. Yeah. So I really wouldn't, think that some of the abuse is baffling.
Yeah, absolutely. Going into halftime, I'll be honest, I can listen to a baseball game on the radio and it's no issue. I can picture everything. I know exactly what's going on. Listening to a football match, even with the great job that Adam Blackmore does, I still struggle to visualize some of the stuff. I lose track of things, and I think it's just because it's. I've been watching for a while, but it's not second nature to me at all. I still really have to work hard to pay attention and kind of keep track of everything. So it sounded like the game was going fine, but then when you look at the halftime stats, it was basically possession was split, shots were even, only one shot on target. It doesn't look like much in terms of a match, but I'm not sure that tells the whole story. I think Cedric had a really good half. I think Tadic also had a really good half. And I think that going into halftime, I think, obviously we won a second goal and I think we could feel like we were the better team in terms of how it sounded on the radio anyway. But the fact that we didn't have that second goal and the fact that when, last time we played Watford, we had a good half. We went into halftime. Changes were made on their part, and then we didn't. And I was worried about that, to be honest. And it looked like they were going to do the same thing again. They went 4-4-2 early on. They brought on Okaka. Luckily, they didn't have Troy Deeney to bring on and kind of bully us around. But as the second half went, when you saw those changes happen, was anybody around you starting to worry that we were going to give this away, or were people kind of just still sitting in the same place they were going into halftime?
Yeah, I think that people were naturally quite worried because of the way that the game went a couple of weeks ago. But you would hope that that Pellegrino would know this is what Watford are going to do at half time. If they're losing, they're going to bring on a big man and some people with pace, and just start pumping balls towards us and forcing the issue somewhat. I think the players would have known that, and I think that it was important. So yes, I think there probably were some nerves, but there was also kind of a hope of, please just make sure that we've learned our lesson from this. It can't do this again. Can't surrender the lead that easily. Yeah.
And there were a couple instances, going through, I think Bobby Madley allowed the game to kind of become more, I don't want to say violent, but become more, there was a lot more going on in terms of tackles going in and things like that because he didn't, I don't think he managed the game very well, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
No, it was poor. It was very poor. We should have had a penalty. Boufal was absolutely clattered in the area. Player, it was one of those. It was one of those situations where the defender went right into the back of him. Sofiane obviously knew the player was coming in from behind and kind of pulled back a little bit to let the player hit into him. And he went down. But really, there's no doubt it's a penalty. It was a clumsy tackle, and Sof should have had a penalty for it. But so that was frustrating. I think he let the game get away from him. But I think that in general, the standard of refereeing was pretty much in keeping with the standard of refereeing we've seen this season. I don't think it changes through the divisions. Something via video assisted replay. Yep. I mean, I know a lot of people are conversations around it are kind of split down the middle. But any extra assistance that some of these referees can have, and sometimes they need, is vital. And also, I think sometimes to a certain extent, the post game elements as well. Things that are missed need to be picked up more, and they seem to be doing that, so that's okay.
Yeah. It was described as possibly looking like a shoulder to shoulder challenge, but I've only seen 2 minutes of replays because there was no TV coverage here in the States for it, and that looked like a blatant push in the back, and it did, and
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know what Bobby Manley was looking at, but like I said, I don't think he really did a great job yesterday. And I'll be honest that I don't really like Watford. I don't really like a lot of their players. And Okaka is one of those guys that even if he played for Southampton, I'm not sure I could ever really like him. Whatever. It seemed like they, as the booking started to go on, the game was maybe settling down a little bit, and then Højbjerg hit the woodwork. I think that was an unlucky from him.
Yeah.
But that shot, the way it was described, looked like an absolute screamer, just a bit high.
Oh, it looked like it was going in all the way until the last minute, and just watching it was it was a thunderbolt. And if he would have, and you know what, if that would have went in, I think we'd have been having a completely different conversation about the game at the final whistle. I think we'd be having a completely different conversation. The fans would have been a lot happier. But those are the narrow margins.
Yeah. Shortly after that, I think this is really where the narrative of the game changes the most. Because up until that point, I think we were the better team. We were winning. It was a little bit stretched. We hadn't gotten the second goal, all that stuff, but having already had to make a substitution in defense, pulling Bertrand and having to put PA in due to injury, Cedric struggling a bit at times, looked like he was in pain, and we took Boufal off and brought Yoshida on, and nobody seemed happy. The commentators were baffled. In my head, I'm always going to try to give the manager the benefit of the doubt, and think that maybe this is because PA is not the strongest defender, and maybe because he's on the opposite side, maybe that's that.
Mm-hmm.
Cedric is struggling, so maybe this is just extra cover. But what I think Dave McIntyre pointed out was we gave up control in the midfield at that point, and we said to Watford, we are going to defend this 1-0 lead from now until the end of the match, and you can have the ball, and here we go. We'll see. And I think that's what fans are most worried about. We don't really trust that we can do that. And to kind of lose control of the game willingly like that is something that I'm not sure is kind of forgivable from the manager.
It was frustrating to see because Boufal had such a good game. I think there are a whole number of players that you could probably have taken off and replaced with Yoshida. But in defence of the manager, whilst I kind of, I have a lot of problems with him tactically, I think Pellegrino was looking to reinforce the back line ahead of the last 10 minutes of the game, when he knew that Watford were going to just pump balls in. They were just going to kind of, go long ball, get people into the box, cause trouble. And sometimes you need an extra centre back in there. And I think that, bringing Yoshida in there, as he did, was actually, bringing Boufal off, was it the right decision? Probably not. But bringing Yoshida on, I think Yoshida was actually the right decision. So I think it was more the person who he took off. Because when you see a player like Boufal have a fantastic game, he's the reason people pay for tickets to go and see football sometimes, entertaining slightly maverick players. And when you see the exciting player get taken off, you're a little bit like, oh, okay, right. So, I think that, to be perfectly honest, I think it was, if I would have been looking to make changes, I would have probably, I probably would have made a double sub. Really, I would have taken Cedric off, maybe take Davis off, and bring Yoshida on. So I think that would have changed things somewhat. I think that would have appeased people slightly. I think it's more who was taken off rather than the reasoning behind it, which, like I said, I think was the correct reason.
All right. Yeah. And I mean, we wound up hanging on, but not before our new record signing. And there's been some debate over how to pronounce this name. But we're just going to go with Carrillo. He comes on. And, I think that was nice for that, but I'm not really sure what he did. I'm not really sure what his role was. I'm not sure, I would think if we're going to sit back, you just want Long up there just to say, go run and hold it up in the corner, but he came on, and I think he had a chance even, shortly after coming on and was unable to convert. But, from obviously small sample size, only like 10 minutes or so, but what did he look like? Did he look comfortable at least when he was on the pitch?
Yeah. I mean, he looks like, someone who could be potentially quite important for us in terms of winning headers. I up at the against opposition defenders. I think that's something we've missed massively this season. I think having him as the number 9 up front, having him as a linchpin that other players can play off, will be important. There's so much written about players these days, but I think that there's no substitute of actually sitting there and watching them and watch how they perform for 90 minutes. People will look at statistics. People will go on to get a squawker and go, well, this conversion rate and that conversion rate and 0.2 and 0.8. Watch the player, see what they do, and actually see what they bring to the game. From what I can see, he doesn't look like he's incredibly pacey. So, he provides an option. So I would like to see him as they had playing off someone like Long. I thought that was quite an interesting having them both up there. Long kind of dropped off slightly and played off Carrillo, and I think that may be how they play it. So I think that some fans may get their wish of having two strikers in the starting lineup, although one won't be playing as a striker.
Sure, but this could really be what brings Gabbiadini along. The fact that totally. he's discussed playing in the 10 role and has done it in the past, and maybe this will be a chance for him to showcase what he can do. But right now, it doesn't really look like that's like he's in the manager's plans. But maybe this is the piece that he needs to be able to do that. But we'll see. That's like you said. There's a lot written about players, and there's a lot of speculation out there. Social media is a very dangerous thing, and it is interesting to kind of get into that. But the obviously Carrillo is our record signing. Like you said, we'll have to wait and see what he looks like. I think he's going to be. I'm not really sure any of our strikers are good enough to be used every single match. I think it has to kind of go by like what the tactics are going to be and how we're going to do how we're going to play things. I think that will be kind of what dictates who plays when, but we'll kind of see. But, before we get into the questions that we got from Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, we have a couple, social media we were talking about a little bit. You use it. You've been slightly more vocal, lately on the Archers Road End handle. Any particular reason that you've been more outspoken recently?
I think that what we've seen on social media as someone who works in it as my day job is it's okay to be I think it's okay if you're not the eternal optimist and that you're not you don't fancy this player or that player, or you don't rate the manager. I personally I'm not Pellegrino's biggest fan, and I think that I've stated that on numerous occasions, and I think that probably in fairness, I think I've probably said something that I've regretted at times. I'm human, and I think that a lot of us are, we all are.
Yeah.
But what I don't like is bullying, and I've never liked bullying. And I think that we're starting to see some of that, and I think we've seen a couple of examples of that. On Twitter, I think comments that were made about Catarina Lipez's size. In what realm is that appropriate? I think that yes, football's kind of a robust sport, but this is the person who's the daughter of the man who saved our football club. This is a person who she could have walked away at any time after her father passed away. Any time, she could have just flogged the club straight away, and she didn't. She stuck with it. She stuck with the project. And everyone talks about Marcus, no one talks about Kat, and it plays into this narrative of women in football not getting enough respect. Female ownership is treated as somewhat of a joke, but she's a fantastic business person, and she's a big reason why the club is where it is today. So maybe I just think people should show a bit of respect to her, and and also it's a reflection. If all you've got to say about somebody is, oh, I think so and so's fat, then I think that says more about you and your own kind of baseline IQ than it does to anybody else.
Yeah.
So seen a few instances of bullying, and I think that there's two ways of dealing. There's two ways of dealing with bullies. And my view on it is that sunlight's the best form of disinfectant. you call people on it and say that it's unacceptable. And yeah, I've seen some things that are unacceptable, and I've seen arguments in bad faith, as well. People asking questions over and over again, the same questions, when they clearly have an agenda, whether that agenda is that Les Reed is to blame for everything and Nicola Cortese was to blame for absolutely nothing at the club, even though he ridiculously overspent on players who didn't kind of recoup and was getting us into trouble with instalment payments and so on and so forth. Lots of people seem to think everything was better back when we had Cortese and back when we had Pochettino or back when we had Koeman. I think it's selective memory, and everyone kind of gets, the rose-tinted spectacles.
Sure.
But ultimately, we are where we are now, and having a conversation about, get rid of Les Reed. He's not going anywhere. I can't see him going anywhere. So, and also you look at it, and for every bad signing he's made, that people will slate him for, him and our scouting team. There's a Sadio Mane,
Yeah.
There's a Virgil van Dijk. There are players who have just, who have come in and been exceptional for us. So I think that some people are just keen to give him as little credit as possible when it comes to signing players that are good, and as much stick as possible with regards to how the club is run. And with Ralph Kruger as well, Ralph Kruger does have a management speak Bible that he keeps by his bedside table. But I think a lot of the criticism comes from this old entrenched idea, and this is the same with Cat as well. That these people, there's this argument of these aren't football people,
right? And
I don't want a football person in charge of our finances. Thank you very much. We're a global sporting entity now, and like it or not, that's what we are. You need someone who actually has, a sense of pounds and pences and in ins and outs, in charge of those sort of elements. People with business experience. I just worry that a lot of the fans who call for, Ralph Kruger's head or Les Reed's head, the one thing that worries me is if they were ever put in charge of the club, I think we'd probably be bankrupt within about a week.
Yeah.
And there'd be loads of, we'd have loads of players who could quote unquote do a job for us on ridiculous salaries, not producing very much. And then we'd be back to having our begging bowls out and being back in we'd be back in League One a lot quicker if we signed everything that moved than when we're kind of following the current strategy. So that's my take on it. Obviously there are footballing points in there, but I think some of the abuse that people have received, some of the people who have been picked on, it's been completely unreasonable, and I think that it needs to stop.
I think standing up for people is sometimes it's hard to do. I think a lot of us don't do it. And, a lot of people on Twitter, even Saints Twitter are some are young, but you even have some adults who, I work with kids and we talk about digital citizenship and all that stuff all the time.
Yeah.
And, damn, I wish some of the people that are on, that are my age and your age would just, pay attention and realize that some of the things they do are hurtful and unnecessary and unacceptable, to be honest. And, if they said some of that stuff in public, they would not, they wouldn't be standing up very long, I don't think, Yeah.
I think that just people need to realize that they're talking to humans and they're talking to people, and these are people with families, people who have, people who are choosing to engage around sports. And sports is, this is entertainment. I love going to the football. It's something that I enjoy, win or lose. And, for someone to actually get to the point where they're receiving personal abuse over something that's a hobby or a pastime, I think it's completely unacceptable. And, I've got absolutely no problem at all with calling that out.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think we had some good social media interaction, in terms of getting some questions for the podcast for you and I.
Right.
On Instagram, Twitter at SFCDELL_IVERY or at Facebook.com/SFC delivery. We have questions kind of from each of those. So we'll kind of go through them now. And the first one we have is from Dan Aldrich. Dan Aldrich 7 on Instagram. He says, do you think the club are waiting until late in the transfer market to drive down prices? And do you think this is a wise move considering our position in the league? He asks another question. He says, do you believe that with Josh Sims coming straight back into the bench a few weeks ago and with Michael Obafemi getting his debut last week that we're starting to give opportunities to our young players? Or is it more to just do with the lack of depth that we have in the squad? So first question first. Do you think we're waiting this long to drive down the prices in the transfer market?
I don't think we're in control of it, and I think that's actually, that would be kind of counterintuitive. I think if you look at transfer fees, transfer fees don't go down as a transfer window carries on; they actually go up because it's supply and demand. There's a reason why agents wait until the last week of the transfer window, and this is probably why. Our deals happen in the last week of the transfer window because agents are smart. They know that they can, if they can have a bidding war for a player between 2 or 3 clubs, it benefits everybody. It benefits the club, it benefits the player, and it benefits the agent.
Right.
So of course they're not going to advise their client to accept the first offer that a club like Southampton put on the table. They're not going to advise. They're going to say, hold on, I'll have a call around. I'll see who else is interested. See if we can drum up some interest.
Yeah.
And that happens for most of the transfer window. And we do, agents of our players do exactly the same. So I think that, I think that we underestimate. Sometimes deals can happen in 24 hours, but sometimes they don't. You're dealing with so many variables with regards to transfers that it's tough to say. We're all impatient. The information overload that we have on social doesn't help. But yeah, I still think that we'll have 1, possibly 2 players in before the end of the window.
Yeah, I mean, it is coming up, and I think we need them. And I think to move on to Dan's second question, with Sims and with Femi getting a start, I think, or getting a debut and being on the bench right away, I think that is a little bit to do with kind of the lack of, some of the injuries and things that we have in the squad, and therefore highlighting the lack of depth that we are currently experiencing, which I think we're trying to address. But I don't know if you agree with that or not.
I think partly yes, partly no. I think that Sims and Obafemi coming in and getting opportunities. Yep, that's through. I think Josh Sims is in there because he's good enough to be on the bench. And with Obafemi, we clearly had, we had Shane Long out that last game. He wasn't expected to be out. So we were kind of, we were left short, and he came on and did okay. That's why we've got youth players. That's why we've got second string players. That's why we have our youth policy to bring these players through. There's often this misconception that just because a player comes through from the youth team that they're somehow worth less than the ones that we buy in for a large fee. But I think if anything, we've kind of disproved that a lot over the years. So just take these players on their own merits and go, well, we've got a player on the bench. Let's see what they can do.
Yeah.
But I think when we're looking at things at the moment in terms of squad depth, Nathan Redmond, where's he at the moment? I would be very surprised if he is. I wouldn't be surprised if something happened in the next, before the end of the window. I think if not this window, then in the summer. I don't think he's happy. I don't think that he's, I think that the fans have made it pretty clear. I think he's got a very hard time. And I think he had a lot of pressure on his shoulders. I mean, the most unhelpful thing that Claude Puel ever did for the club was compare Nathan Redmond to Thierry Henry, because they're clearly not the same player. And it gave the lads these huge boots to fill. How can you ever fill those boots? And he's also replacing Mane. In some ways he hasn't helped himself. But I think that things have gone quite sour for him at the club, and I think that he's probably looking for a move away. And I think that with the potential, Quincy Promes coming in, I think that we could see, maybe Nathan leaving.
Yeah. And like you said, he hasn't had the best of times here. He's never really seemed to win the fans over, for one reason or another. And he had a big run of games, and I think that's what we want. You want to give players a chance, and he had a big run of games. He didn't do it. I still like him. I like him as a player. But there's something that's just not working, and if he needs to go somewhere else and continue his career, go for it. All the best.
Exactly.
But that kind of wraps up the Nathan Redmond chat. But we have two more, or three more questions. Two deal with the manager and one dealing with the player. Would you rather tackle the manager now or deal with the player first? And when I talk about tackling the manager, I don't mean running on the pitch and actually two-footing him, but like answering the questions.
I think some people would love to do that. But, let's go for the player first, just so we can kind of wrap that bit up, and then we can kind of chat about the manager a little bit more.
Okay. So Ian Brown, who's at Harry Dunn 999 on Twitter, says Steven scored yesterday, played well, and a clean sheet, but still uncomfortable with not signing another center back. We're one injury away from disaster with Bednarak and fading into oblivion with Gardos. Can we afford to wait till summer to invest in a top center back to replace VVD? So I give that question to you, and thanks to Ian for sending that in.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. I mean, is there a top centre back out there that we can sign? That's the question. And also as well, I think it's a bit harsh to say Bednarik fading into oblivion, because he played against Watford a couple of weeks ago, and he didn't seem to be Fulham even in the FA Cup a couple of weeks ago, and he didn't embarrass himself. So I think he's 100% ready to kind of play constantly. No, but I think that he's good. I think that we probably could do with a centre back, but I think we can wait until the summer for that. We need to concentrate on getting Stevens and Wesley kind of bedded in, building a partnership, getting a bit of an understanding. You can't chop and change that. And I still think that Stevens will turn into he's a good defender now. I think he'll turn into an excellent defender. You look around at defences. You look around at the defences around us, and we've certainly got the strongest. A lot of the problems we're having is down to lack of communication and players not playing alongside each other for long enough. You fix that. You settle the lineup. That's when you start to see. That's when you start to see results. You start to see development, and I think we may be in the market for another centre back, but I think that'll probably be in the summer. I don't think it'll be. I don't think it'll be this window.
I think that Stevens and Hoot is probably the partnership of the future, and at least that's how I see it. And I could be wrong, and whatever, but. It seems to be that's going to be what we are moving forward. And Yoshida has, kind of assumed that role of the number 3 center back, which I think is what he is. No disrespect to him. He's done a job, and I kind of thought he would have moved on last summer, but then he signed the contract extension, and he seems to understand his role and do it very well, and that's great. And you mentioned Bednarak coming into the team a couple weeks ago. Not only did he play, but he played out of position, and he did okay. And so that I think that's fine. But the only thing I worry about with Stevens is we've seen it just in the air. We don't really have the physical center back yet, and we'll see if that comes or not. I'm not sure you create that. That might just be body type and mentality and everything else. I don't know.
I think we were quite spoiled with the fact that at one point we had Font and Van Dijk playing in that position as our two kind of as our central defensive pairing, and both physical players who were kind of decent in the air. So, I think seeing as he's still going for those. I think that who needs that element of play massively. He's a tall guy. There's no excuse for not being good in the air, really. I think if you're a tall guy, because you've naturally got a few inches head start on some of these players. So. Invest a bit more time in that, please. But we'll see. I don't want to judge them too. I don't want to judge them too early on into their relationship. I think a lot of the problems we've had at the back have been down to communication, And also, I think that having McCarthy as goalkeeper has been a lot more helpful for people, the players, because I think they're more confident having McCarthy back there than they are having Forster back there.
Yeah, well, I mean, McCarthy seems to be more willing to command that 6-yard area and to talk a little bit more. And
yeah,
Forster is a big dude, but he doesn't move as well. And whether it's post injury or whatever it is, his kind of inability to be mobile is I think to his detriment. And when you're that big, you kind of gotta use that your physical presence, and he doesn't do that as well. And McCarthy does. And
he'll never be the same after that injury. That's the sad fact of it. He'll never be as mobile. The damage that he did to his leg is just that won't go, unfortunately. I think we're looking at a reduced kind of Fraser Forster. And at the moment, in terms of commanding the area, it's in terms of coming out for corners and just generally kind of being more agile, I think we've got the best keeper at the club for that at the moment. And also, I suppose, kickings, not as suspect as some keepers we've had in the past, and that's actually a relief. It's nice for the ball to come back to a keeper, and you're not quite as worried about their kicking as we have been before. Yeah. I like McCarthy. I feel comfortable and confident when he's in goal.
All right. Let's move on to the manager, and then we'll wrap this up. St. Foo Fighter says, who is at Charlie LNF on Twitter, says, "Good morning, dudes. I would like to know if Mopo is out of his depth at this level. His in-game decisions are unbelievable, to say the least. He doesn't seem to be learning from his mistakes. Would you agree?" Before you jump in there, I know I jumped on him for the Yoshida decision. And like we said, maybe bringing Yoshida in was fine. It was shoring up the back. My biggest thing with it was that he seemed to willingly give away control of the match, because I thought up until that point we, for the most part, had control in the midfield and elsewhere. But and it's not a one-time thing, like you said. This has happened over and over. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think that he may be out of his depth as a coach. I think that some of the decisions that he's made have shown his naivety at Premiership level. And also, I kind of feel like he's never, whilst I'm not saying that we're not Real Madrid and we're not Barcelona, but this is probably by far the best team, the best squad of players that he has ever managed. And one thing that I'm concerned of is that I don't think he's necessarily been able to handle that. When he was at Alaves, he was pulling together a team, and he could just basically just go, right, we're going to defensively spoil this game. We're going to try and nick a 1-0. I know I've got a lot of low quality players, a lot of loan signings. We'll just do what we can. With this team, there's less of an excuse for that. We've got some good players here. There's high quality players within our squad. And I don't think he's managed it very well at all in some ways. And I don't think that he's learned from his mistakes in key games. One of the most frustrating things for me was earlier in the season when we were playing against Brighton, and he thought that 1-0 away from home after we just scored a goal, that's it. Let's shut up shop and let's drop off. Can't do that, and we can't do that again for the game. For the game this week. Brighton, in every area of the pitch, we are superior to them. We have, and whilst we should be taking the game to those teams, we should be beating those teams, and we should be, if we play to the best of our abilities, we should be looking at beating a team like Brighton 2 or 3-0. And my concern was when Romeu said, even when we're going forward, Pellegrino wants us to be focusing on defence, and that sort of mentality. Yes, it's like 11 lads chasing after a ball like something in a playground, but at the same time, if you're committed to attacking, commit to attacking, and then once that passage of play is over, then and then switch to what else you're going to do, modify your in-game tactics, that sort of thing. So constantly thinking of defending whilst you're attacking probably explains why there are so many sideways passes at times. I think that the players are so scared of losing their man that they're scared of actually going forward, especially in midfield. So that's a big problem. That's something that I don't really understand about him. Will that change over time? I think that he's been told by the Southampton hierarchy that he's on thin ice with that. I don't buy the Virgil van Dijk excuse of Van Dijk being the Van Dijk situation being disruptive. You either play him or you don't. That's long tall and short of it. It doesn't explain why. It doesn't explain at all the performances. Those players are professionals, and he's a professional. Should get on with the job. I don't think that counts as a distraction. I think it's too early to say has he learned from his mistakes. But early signs are maybe, possibly. But I guess we'll see at the end of the season.
Yeah,
I don't think he's going anywhere.
Yeah. So the next question comes from Ollie May on Facebook. He left a Facebook comment on the post and says, my question would be, is there anything that MP could do to retain his job for next season? And if so, what is it? And I think there are definitely some fans who think that it's going to be another Claude Puel type situation. He's going to manage the season. We're unhappy. He's gone. But I don't necessarily agree with that. Even if I'm not the biggest fan of him, I don't see him going anywhere.
No, I'd agree with that. And you know what? If he keeps us in the league this season, I think he should get another season. I think that we throw away managers too easily. And yeah, he hasn't had a great season. I think that he'll put his hands up to that and go, in some elements, I haven't been good enough. And, and in some elements, some of the players haven't been good enough. So, how can I envisage Pellegrino keeping his job? Winning games. That's it. Winning games. That's all that matters now, between now and the end of the season. I'm not bothered so much about style. I'm not bothered that much about tactics. I'm concerned about winning games. We're at a stage now where we've got 20 points. We need points on the board. And that sprint to 40 starts now. So I don't care if we are shinning goals in, punching goals into the net like Watford. I don't care what's happening at the moment. I really don't care how ugly we win it. It's a sprint to 40 now. Let's kind of, let's push on, and it's down to him and the players now. We're set up. He's got what he's wanted. He wanted Carrillo in. He wanted to, and it's down to them to just pick on now and produce. Excuses have got, all of the excuses gone now. There are no excuses for him not to get on and do his job. And you know what? Maybe this is the difficult season. So maybe we'll see a completely different side next season. It's too early to tell. But I think that I think that it's not helped having Puel at Leicester. But so in short, what would he be able to do to keep his job? Yes, just win games. That's all you need. It will change the whole atmosphere in the club. It will change the mood of the fans. Just want to win some games.
Yeah, and I think we're past the point of being able to worry about style for this season, which is unfortunate. I think that's what we were hoping for coming into the season, is something with a little bit more style, a little bit more flair. But now we're down at the bottom of the table. We're in the relegation zone. It's now just about survival, and if you score a couple of screamers in there, so be it. But the more important thing is that those screamers are the difference between us getting 3 points and getting 1 or 0 points.
I don't care if we win shaky 1-0 games from now on until the end of the season, as long as the points are ours. That's my perspective. I've watched much worse Southampton teams than this. So let's just get to the end of the season.
Yeah. And massive week coming up this week, two really big games, 2 games that I didn't think one that we should win, even though Brighton are above us in the table. And then coming up against West Brom, that is they seem to be coming into it. Rodriguez, scored yesterday to put, I think, Liverpool out of the cup. If I read that correctly. I think he scored 2. So, we'll see what kind of form he's in when he, or what kind of show he puts on when we face them. But it's, like you said, it's important. This is a big week, and we gotta face the music now. It's time to buckle down and do it.
Got to pull your trousers up and get going. This is a test of everyone at the club. supporters, players, coaching staff, senior management. This is a test of everyone's character from now on until the end of the season. And from my perspective as a supporter, that's what I'll be judging those players and that coach on: character. It gets hard. It gets a bad press because Brendan Rodgers would constantly talk about great character in the team, but it's important, and that's what we need. Need these players to show a bit of character, stand up to be counted. We need Pellegrino to do that as well. He comes out every week in press conferences and fields questions, and those players there. So, so the only time we get to see that is when they post some sort of generic Instagram comment, or they're out there on the pitch, and it's time for them to show that on the pitch. No ifs, no buts, no excuses. If we get relegated, it's Pellegrino's fault, but it's also 11 players out there. It's their fault too.
Absolutely. All right, man. Well, that does it for me. Is there anything else that you like to put out there? I feel like we covered a lot. We didn't speculate on transfers as much, which I'm okay with.
Yeah, I think that you can speculate on transfers, but I think there's enough out there.
Yeah.
There's speculation out there without me getting involved in that. So, whoever we bring in, I'll support them 100%. And I'm just looking forward to seeing what happens next. So, yeah, from my perspective, once again, thanks for having me on the show. You guys know where I am on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Just search Archers Road End. And I'll probably have another blog out in the next few weeks or so. I'm not rushing anything because I've got a few other things on the boil. But I'll be there. So
look forward to that as always.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much.
No problem. And we'll be sure to talk to you soon.
Take it easy and keep up the good work.
All right, man. Thanks. And that does it for this episode of the Southampton Delivery Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. I hope that you enjoyed the show. We'll be back next week with another episode, and hopefully we'll have some points to talk about. Hopefully it'll be 6 points, maybe even 4, and hopefully some of those points are on the board. Special thanks to my guest this week, Ben Hernandez-Stroud, who writes the Archers Road End blog and does so much more. Be sure to check out his blog at archersroad.wordpress.com or connect with him on social media at Archers Road End on Twitter and Instagram, and at facebook.com/Archers Road End. The links to all of those are in the show notes to make it easy. Connect with them, let them know what you think. Additionally, you can get in touch with this show on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. We're at facebook.com/SFC Del Ivory. And we're on Twitter and Instagram at SFCDELL_IVERY. If you're interested in subscribing to the show so you do not miss an episode, you can find it on iTunes, Stitcher, Acast, Google Play, TuneIn Radio, or wherever else you get your podcasts. There are links in the show notes, or you can simply search Del Ivory anywhere you listen to podcasts and click subscribe. As always, this podcast is partnered with the Saints Report. For all your Southampton FC news and needs, be sure to check out the Saints Report on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Special thanks to Matt of the We Are Southampton page, who does the artwork for the show. For matchday edits, polls, competitions, and more, be sure to check out the We Are Southampton page on Instagram. Once again, there are links in the show notes. Enjoy it. All music for this episode comes courtesy of the Free Music Archive at freemusicarchive.org. The intro song is Epic Song by Bosscat Games, and the song you're listening to now is Aim is True by Poddington Bear. We'll be back next week to discuss the 2 big matches coming up between now and then, Brighton at home and West Brom away. Until then, remember that together, we march on.